brought to you by Downtown Grand Rapids, Inc. Please stay tuned, and we'll see you shortly. Hello, and welcome to this live stream of today's public meeting, brought to you by Downtown Grand Rapids, Inc. Please stay tuned, and we'll see you shortly. Hello, and welcome to this live stream of today's public meeting, brought to you by Downtown Grand Rapids, Inc. Please stay tuned, and we'll see you shortly.
Meeting on July 10th, 2025 at noon. Can we get roll call?
Sure. Josh Longer.
Here.
Craig Clark.
Here.
Rick Wynn.
Here.
Chris Mathis.
Here.
Laura Sesa. Chad Patton. Stephen Pawaka. I'm sorry. I am so sorry. Stefan Pawaka. Adam Wheeler. Kevin Whistleink. David LeGrand are all absent.
Okay, we have a quorum.
We do.
All right, first order of business, I'd like, based on our recent change and approval of the, why am I blanking? Our
Commission rules.
Yeah, our commission rules. I would entertain a motion to remove item number 4 as we now go to one public comment section on the agenda.
I'll make the motion. Second.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, any opposed? All right. Next, we'll do approval of the minutes. They're from June 5th. They were in our packets. Do we have any comments or corrections? All right, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes from June 5th.
Second.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. We have no action items today, so I guess that's a good thing. But we'll go right into discussions. We have the Dash Onboard Riders Survey Project.
Thank
You
you.
want to cue that up, or?
Yep, you bet. So we are in the middle of working on our onboard Dash rider surveys, and Max Dillevin is overseeing that effort, and he's here to just walk you all through. We have a memo in your packet that describes the project and where we're at, but Max is here to walk through that and then also answer any questions you might have.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. This project was verbalized to you, at least in past Mobile GR Commission meetings. We had mentioned that we were going to be doing an onboard survey to gather feedback from our riders. The goal is to try to keep Dash as much of a relevant and a service that meets the needs of the folks using it as much as possible, and respond to their needs. And by doing that, we try to tease out some of those elements that they like about Dash, maybe don't like about Dash, and try to better understand that kind of lived experience of those who use the service either regularly or infrequently. This was a little interesting project from the standpoint of trying to design a survey instrument for users of a system when they're only riding it for about 5 to 10 minutes. Dash trips tend to be a little bit shorter. So the survey instrument really had to be very concise and allow folks to get through the survey, get through as many questions as possible during their limited time on board. So some of the focus areas of the survey, we asked users like how often they're using it, the purpose of their trips, whether they're using it to see friends, reach medical facilities, shopping, and social interactions, places of worship. Just trying to better understand specifically what each trip is being Dash is being utilized for, and if folks are also using other mobility programs like DART, Lime, if they ride the Rapid, if they're bicycling, or if they're commonly using their own vehicle. We also want to know what specific improvement priorities folks have. If we're not running early enough on weekdays or not running late enough on weekends, the frequency of the service isn't quite what they want. They want shorter wait times or maybe signage to indicate when the next bus is coming, things like that. We also ask questions about folks' perceptions of safety. We want to know if people feel safe riding Dash, and if not, we want to know why. And overall questions about satisfaction. Are you happy with the service? Would you recommend it to a friend, family member, or colleague? So to collect this data, we went on board. We conducted this internally with MobileGR staff, brandished with iPads to ride the Dash during various times of the day and days of the week. So we want to catch morning, afternoon, evening, and nighttime riders on various days of the week. So we staggered that throughout to ensure that we're collecting as broad of a perspective as possible. We also had comment cards with a QR code, so folks could also take the survey in their own time on their own personal device. And yeah, as of earlier this week, we're around 170 respondents. That's a pretty strong response rate. We're shooting for anywhere between like 150 and 200 was our goal, so we're kind of right in the middle there. We'll continue to be collecting more responses throughout the early part of this month, but we'll be closing it after another week or so, and then begin analyzing the data that we've collected. And with that, I'm assigning you all some homework. So you don't have to do this, but if you are interested, I also have these QR codes on these. It allows you to take the survey if you so desire. That way you get a sense for what the specific survey instrument included. And also gives you an opportunity to provide your feedback as well. And so the idea is that probably in the fall sometime, we'll come back to you all with some kind of processed and analyzed data of those findings and really get a sense of who's riding Dash, why, and what things they want to see changed about it or what things they like. So really excited. So far it's been a really positive effort. Folks are really eager to give us their feedback. Not too many individuals have turned down the offer to be surveyed. So yeah, with that, happy to answer any questions from you all.
Have we reached out to, or tried to reach out to people who are not riding the Dash to find out why they're not riding the Dash, i.e. hotels who have obviously tourists that potentially, I mean, we changed the route to try to make it more of a touristy route. And I'm curious if such as our hotels and maybe the museums and those key people and businesses to say, can you give us some feedback why people maybe not riding
Sure.
the dash?
I'm going to turn this over to Max Gillis, who's done a little more of that outreach.
Yeah, so the distinction for this survey specifically was to be a ridership one. When you're doing surveys, it's difficult to control a lot of variables, and this one being one that we could control with this data gathering. So obviously, it would miss out on the people who don't ride the dash because of the very nature of what we're trying to collect with this for this data. So last year we did a mobility survey that had an entire section dedicated to the dash that gathered a lot of the questions around why aren't you using the service, and we got a lot of valuable data that we presented around this time. I think it was in the fall of 2024. However, that being said, we did a significant amount of that exact outreach when we did the reroute, which was in 2023, and I think it's time to do that again. So I do think having, like how this is a more specific, concerted effort to gather certain types of feedback instead of that larger mobility survey that we do every 2 years, I think doing a similar one with the local stakeholders, whether it be businesses or the venues that you mentioned or like hotels. And we have some plans, and Max and I have been brainstorming on this and excited to bring forward to you in the future, but on ways that we can kind of pitch tools and resources to those sort of organizations to provide them the ability to take advantage of the dash that currently exists, but then also gather feedback in ways we can improve it.
Okay. Go ahead. Stefan?
I guess, yes, this is a ridership survey, but we're kind of, like, the ultimate goal to me is to increase ridership, right? Making our current riders super happy is awesome. I go from less of a touristy standpoint and more of like a residential usability standpoint too. So, in future surveys, I'd love to see maybe like neighborhood outreach or something like that to perhaps expand our dash network.
I completely agree. I think that's a very noble and worthy effort, and maybe there's some things that we can incorporate or conversations that we can have a little bit earlier, like as part of the parking investment strategy. We're going to be doing outreach with the corridor improvement authorities, and dash is a really key component of some of those TDM efforts to alleviate the parking demand that.
Parking investment strategy in itself.
100%, yeah. So dash has to be a major part of that conversation. So it may not totally kind of check the box of what you're driving at, but I think that's maybe a good place to start as getting feedback on dash from like the corridor improvement authorities, at least because it's feedback outreach that we're already planning on doing this summer. So yeah.
Thanks.
Just to build off that, so one of the really helpful benefits to having a specific user survey or a ridership survey is to compare that with the data that we got from our other surveys and notice the difference in the perception that may be there. And I think that, so if anything that I want to get across is this is just one part of the tool that we're doing to gather the feedback. So yeah, completely agree. I think we not just want to make their experience more enjoyable or see that, but also just see how it reflects comparatively to folks who are taking the survey that aren't using it and comparing the perception with the reality of the folks who do to allow us to better when we go out into those engagements and make sure that we're addressing that. So.
What was the joke you had? Can you say it publicly? It was really funny. I forget.
We're at max
We're at
capacity.
max capacity. It's terrible.
Nice.
Back when we changed the routes, I was really excited for the opportunity to connect West Side. I remember I was just talking to former Commissioner John O'Connor about it too, because he was a big supporter. And the feedback we've gotten from business on the West Side has not been positive. I would say very much the opposite. And I mentioned at a previous meeting as part of this intercept survey, there's an opportunity to engage business along the corridor and see what their anticipation, because part of the dream, the vision was this is I think to Stefan's point, it's like, I would like it to be touristy, but I also like it to be a good connection for residents and employees. And as we lose some of the surface parking and have better use of those spaces, it's going to be more important to have a really high quality dash. And I've been talking to the Rapid a little bit too about how are they planning the engagement around event days at the amphitheater and soccer stadium. And that's an amazing opportunity for folks that maybe are coming into the city who they need to have a great experience or they're never going to try public transit. So, whether or not it fits this survey, I think if not, I'll do it myself probably and go along the corridor and engage with the business, especially on the expansion on the north and west side, because it'd be great to really figure out, not that the model I voted for too, right? Like, isn't working, but how can we get it to be this vision we had, where it's a really accessible, consistent, clean, and adds to the vibrancy of our business districts. So, I guess my question is: are we able to do the engage? I know I just had a state. I'm just pontificating. Are we able to engage with the businesses near and along the corridor, or do we want to partner on that? Because I'd love to have them be able to provide the same type of feedback, because I know a lot of them were hoping that this was a connection for their customers. And as we know, a lot of hospitality businesses are really struggling right now, and if we can find ways to increase their foot traffic, it would really help.
Absolutely. And I think, as you mentioned, there was a lot of that in the reroute discussions, and that was 2023, so it's been enough time where we can go back and approach those. And there was some things like getting the 7-day-a-week service and increasing some of the frequency that we were kind of focused on internally, is making it to that level that we were, when we initially pitched it to the businesses, that we would have. So now that we've achieved that, I think it is time to go out and not just ask for feedback, which we certainly would do, but we have a number of ideas of ways we can present tools and resources to them that can just be, whether it's just, pieces of paper or flyers or maps and things that we can provide to help incentivize folks using the service in the way that I think they initially envisioned back in 2023. So we'll come with some solutions, but also obviously wanted to get some feedback. So I think that makes perfect sense, and it aligns with kind of our vision. So it would be just an additional tool. So we have the 2024 and the 2026 mobility survey efforts, these riderships, which we're doing on off cycles from those, and then an additional business, a mix of engagement as well as feedback gathering. Okay.
And I will say, John, I know you have a ton of connections with those folks, so and any help that you're able to provide in terms of either making...
maybe if I come up with some simple questions, and now that we have yours, like maybe we can see what I don't know, because I don't know buses, like you all know buses and service. Maybe there's some questions I won't think, but I bet you we could get really strong participation within 2-3 weeks.
And doing something similar to, hosting some events at the chamber, something similar to that, where we have like an open house type setting would be good as well. I think in addition with the going out and talking to folks.
I'm making a note.
Can I ask a clarifying question about this? So what are if you're able to share, what is the feedback that you're getting from the businesses?
There isn't a customer base that's utilizing the buses.
Okay.
So to be, kind of fully transparent, I think that there's a cleanliness issue and there's a perception of safety that we got to figure out how do we prove it. I love the idea of having this connectivity to our business districts. How do we make it work given the realities of wanting to have this free circulator that connects amenities to neighborhoods, to residential districts? Like, it's it's been pretty overwhelmingly positive. I mean, and we've got a measurable increase in theft in certain stores since it's moved out there, like within months of it opening, that can be directly related. And so there's some concerns around that. And I don't know how we address it yet, but I think it's important that we notice it because we've been celebrating a lot the ridership numbers. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I think it's also be good to recognize, like, how can we create a better experience? I want to be able to use it, but I'd rather walk. And I've heard a lot from folks that they would rather do that, even people that have been here a long time or are residents. How do we make sure that everyone wants to do it? Because pre-COVID, cities are struggling with this everywhere, but pre-COVID, the Dash, it wasn't perfect, but it was very popular with connecting folks from where they park in cheaper lots to their jobs. It was used more on just the quick routes, and I wonder, like, how do we adjust to the new realities and make sure it's a really great asset for our community?
Thanks for that input, Josh. I want to push back a little bit on it's a noble goal to make transit that everyone wants to use, but we as a society are not in a place to do that, to have that as a realistic goal, unfortunately. I would say focusing on people that do use the Dash currently and growing that user base and helping our residents get around and our visitors too. The ones that do want to use it should be our priority. Obviously tourism is a huge part of our industry here, but if no one has an option of getting downtown without a car, they're still going to bring a car downtown if they're visiting from the airport or something like that. So expecting them to use transit, the Dash in particular, I think is kind of a fool's errand. And that takes societal change over years and decades. And I'm kind of, I'm curious to see what we could do to change that, but I don't have a lot of optimism when it comes to that. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I mean, we don't need to belabor this point too much, but I would echo what Commissioner Pawlka mentioned and just say that, you know, I think that by changing what the Dash is from a parking shuttle to really a downtown circulator, I think necessarily comes with changes in who is riding it. And I think what we've done is we're better serving the community that we have now, clearly, because we're seeing such an increase in ridership and people using it. So, yeah, just a statement.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, can I make just one more quick announcement? Speaking of our buses in our fleet and cleanliness, we just retired the final 3 diesel buses in our fleet, so we are finally diesel-free as of the 1st of this month. So that's great news, moving in the right direction. So
Great. Next is our favorite subject, 26 budget.
Okay. I'm going to start with this presentation, and I also have our friends from engineering. This is Tim Berkman, who is the city engineer, and Cindy Irving, who is the assistant city engineer, and we partner directly with this department to help get things on the ground. So I wanted to bring them along. So we're going to work together to talking through what was brought to the commission for budget. I do want to just make a quick caveat. I had planned at this time of year to bring you all really some hard numbers and let you dig into some and really pull that curtain back a little bit. We're undergoing a financial system transition, and we, during that transition over the last few weeks, we have had some like shutdowns while they make transitions, and I can't pull numbers for you right now. So instead of giving you something that's could be inaccurate, I decided not to go super detailed. So I'm going to give you some key example strategies and some numbers that I know for a fact we are investing in fiscal year 26, because they were things that looked a lot like fiscal year 25. So, but please bear with me. My plan is to come back to you in September with more detailed numbers about your fiscal year 26 budget, so that y'all can really see behind the curtain a little bit more. All of that information was presented to the city commission, but we like to come back and show it to you from a department level, because it is a little bit confusing, because we come from so many different funding line items and how our expenditures work. And I want to talk some more with y'all about those details. So I just want to preface this by saying, if you have detailed budget questions, we will have to hold those, but I want to hear them. So, because I'd be excited to hear about what you all want later. Cindy, did you have anything you wanted to add before we get going?
Sure, I think when we transition to our group, what's attached in your package is the Vital Streets budget that was presented to the Vital Streets Oversight Commission. Lots of numbers, not a lot of glamour. So I would be very interested to know what you would like to know about Vital Streets and budget and funding, and then I can adjust where we spend time. Following what's in this budget, we also put together some slides of before and afters for a reconstruction, a rehabilitation, and a preventative maintenance. So I feel like visually that helps explain the work that we do and what can be accomplished with those methods. So I think when it transitions to me, I'll take a brief moment, and if there are specific topics you're interested in, if I can hear those up front, we'll adjust for those.
Great. So you guys have a couple of minutes while I go through this to just jot down your thoughts about some things you might have for Cindy. Okay, awesome. Let's go. Do I use this, Colin? Is it in my hands? Okay, cool.
This isn't a building version, so you can use
That's cool. Okay. So here are my three goals for today is I want to give you all a review of sort of my strategy for fiscal year 26 and the focus areas that the City Commission has set, and what part Mobile GR plays. I want to overview and open up discussion in any questions that you have about the really crucial cross-departmental partnerships we have. I have one really critical partnership here today. There are a couple of other departments that we work a lot with to help realize our goals, and then also just show you some of those example strategies, investments for fiscal year 26 to give you an idea of what we're looking at. So first of all, this is really important to remember that everything that we do at Mobile GR is not something that I dreamed up. It's not the Jessica Smith director vision. It is the vision that the commission sets, and they set that during a strategic planning process. It starts with our mission, vision, values, and then what we have are a set of priorities. And in our priorities, you'll see governmental excellence, economic prosperity and affordability, engaged, connected community, health and environment, mobility, and safe community. All of Mobile GR helps assist in many of these different priorities, but we are the owner of the mobility priority along with our partners, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. So what I wanted to show you here, and I had some fun animations, but we're going to do without them. And so if it makes more sense in your packet, the purple wiggly line is what Mobile GR owns. We own the mobility focus area. Anytime we go to strategic planning and somebody has a question about mobility, they say, Mobile GR, what are you doing about that? There's two other spots, and they actually live up in economic prosperity and affordability, and that's the parking investment strategy is sitting in that particular focus area, as well as expand access to safe, people-centered mobility options. Those two strategies are hanging out underneath economic prosperity. The things you see in pink, I think kind of the pinkish reddish, those are things that are multi-departmental efforts. We have a piece in it at Mobile GR, and I bet if engineering did their part, their version of this, there would be other things throughout that they also have parts in, especially when it comes to capital projects. So there's many different places, and I kind of outlined in those pink areas where we have a substantial staff investment into helping assist other departments who that may be their focus area that they own and they are the champions of, but we offer them help and in those different areas. And then finally up here in the very top left, I've circled in green. These are things that all departments at the city are responsible for upholding. That's under governmental excellence. That's really sort of owned by your city manager, if you will. But what I wanted to show you is just a couple of places where we are working to hire, develop, and retain a talented and diverse workforce, because we have a huge role to fill with Jennifer Casper's departure and a new assistant director coming on board. Oops. Okay. So really briefly, I want to chat through how do we work towards the city's goals. And one of the things that we work on in the governmental excellence goal is to hire, retain, and develop that talented workforce. So when you come in new to an organization like I did a year ago, my job is to do all three of those things, and there are a number of strategies that I've put in place to help us do that. So first of all, I have a people first philosophy, and I want to help develop the people best that I can. And what I noticed is that there was an opportunity for focused people management training for my supervisors. So anyone who oversees people in any capacity, we have monthly meetings, and during those meetings I have different focus areas. We talk about feedback, we talk about performance management, we talk about all the things that you all do with your employees and with your businesses as well, and you'd probably be very familiar with those types of things. So we have focused training around those for supervisors. I've also integrated equity and engagement training for all staff, and so that is happening even with our part-time staff. And to date, I believe we've held 5 or 6 of these opportunities, because there are 100, there's over 100 staff at Mobile GR, and it's just taken a little time. We started that, I believe, back in May, and we're working through getting everybody in that training. And that training is put together and facilitated by the Office of Equity and Engagement. Retention strategies, we are working through building a framework for process improvement so that when opportunities for improvement come up from staff or come up from our supervisors, I can take those opportunities and we can talk through how there might be an improvement opportunity, but we have a consistent framework to do that. And also one of the other things that we're working on is a supervisor's handbook, which puts things all in one place for the supervisors. Mobile GR supervisors, they are across the gamut. We have folks that oversee highly technical staff all the way to folks who are overseeing folks that are taking care of your parking facilities, and as well as accountants and business office representatives and customer service. And so because of that sort of large diversity of staff oversight, I'm working on putting together a handbook that helps have some tools and resources for all people managers in one place. So the key departmental recruitments that we're looking at in fiscal year 26 are a couple of recruitments that are from vacancies. And that first one, assistant director, I begin that recruitment process. We will get that on the street here in about a week or so, and it will be open for the time period that HR says it should be open. And we have a process to go through for that recruitment. So you should be seeing that publicized pretty quickly. And then we will move through. It will probably take about 10 to 12 weeks for that recruitment from the date that it hits public. The parking shift supervisor, this was an ad in our budget this year. And we really appreciate that from the commission. The parking shift supervisor, we originally had 3. They run a 24/7 operation. So if you take 24 hours a day times 7 days a week and you divide that by 3, you've got some folks that had a lot of overtime. And so I was seeing you all's the budget for Mobile GR has crept up. It was over 20% increase in overtime for the operations and that was for a select group of folks that oversee operations for parking, and that increase has been since 2022. So even though we are still, where that gave me pause and an opportunity for perhaps to expand your staff is because 2022, we are just coming out of COVID, and COVID, of course, took a huge nosedive with your parking users. So if we're coming out of COVID and I'm seeing that kind of staffing level needs with overtime, I thought it was time to ask for a little additional staff to help with operations. So we have that, and we'll be recruiting for that. Dispatch customer service, that's the folks who, if you can't get your ticket out of parking garage, or you have any trouble, or you call because there's something going on and you need to report something, they'll answer the phone 24 hours a day at Mobile GR. We have an open position there that we are recruiting for, and that was a ad in last year's budget. So I put it here. I don't have all our open positions here, but I put that one in because it was an ad in the fiscal year 25 budget, and then we had someone in that role, and then we had someone who had been on our staff resign, so we've had an opening again. So we have yet to get all 4 dispatchers back in there. And again, you think about 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you divide that by 4. I got a lot of people filling in right now. So we're excited to get that team really staffed up. And then finally, administrative aid for your director to try and help department-wide administrative work. This is a position that has not been in the department for a couple of years, and so that was an ad in this. I added that position back in this budget, or I should say the commission graciously added that back when I requested. So here's how we work together with the departments that I talk a lot about when we're talking about project work. So today I just want to kind of, there's lots of departments that we definitely work with, but today specifically, this is kind of around how our infrastructure gets taken care of. So Mobile GR, the engineering department, and public works, these are really our roles and our responsibilities. And there's a couple of funding sources. And as you can see, some of those funding sources we're sharing. In fact, quite a few of them. So when I talk about what's funded and what project goes where, and how a project is being implemented, this could be why there's it can be a little bit chaotic to talk about that. And Cindy's got a lot more information for you later. So the overall strategic plan focus area for Mobile GR is mobility, and that aspirational goal in the city's strategic plan is an innovative, efficient, low carbon, and equitable mobility solutions that are safe, affordable, and convenient to the community. Like I said, very aspirational, but it is the goal in our strategic plan, and that's what we're striving for. There's 4 objectives that are owned under that mobility focus area, and they're here. I don't want to read them out to you all, but I'm going to give you some examples of strategies about how we've been doing this work. And I have a little asterisk in here to show you how some of these things, even though, like I said, Mobile GR might own the mobility focus area, there are departments that we rely on heavily. We could not do or reach these goals or even get through some of these strategies without help from our partners in other departments. So specifically, I would just want to call out one of them. Enforcement is here under proactive traffic safety, and your mind might go directly to, well, GRPD enforces traffic safety, and that is correct. But also we do have parking enforcement as staff at Mobile GR, and they, even though they do give tickets when your meter runs out, right, and you don't get back to your meter, that's a large part of what they do. But they also do safety-related enforcement when it comes to how cars are parked. And so that's something that, just to remember that safety comes in a lot of, traffic safety there's a lot of different things that we work with other departments on, and that one is a shared effort. The other one I want to pull out there is the development of the transportation network. Although we do a lot of the planning, engineering also does planning, the planning department does planning, and economic development. There's a lot of planning that's going on that impacts the transportation network development, and we rely heavily on our partners to work together to make that happen. Okay, so these are some information that I've put in your packets, and I'm going to run through it a little bit quicker. These are pulling out from those objectives what we're really focusing on, evaluation, and these are examples of what evaluation might look like for Mobile GR. For example, your neighborhood traffic calming program. There's an evaluation that happens, we do some pilots, we try some things, and then eventually there is going to be a permanent infrastructure solution depending on the outcome of the pilot and the studies that we do there. Enforcement, again, it's a really heavy partnership that we need to have with parking enforcement, GRPD, and with the fire department, not so much on the enforcement side. Obviously, fire department's not enforcing things in that way that you might traditionally think about, but we pair with them as our first responders who are responding, and they are gathering information on incidents and crashes, and we use that to know kind of what's happening with folks when they're getting hurt on our streets, and how can we use that information to do a better job. So an example investment for fiscal year 26 is, and these, like I said before, my numbers are not, I can't get to them right now in my financial system, but these are the numbers that I'm pretty sure went through. So if these change, I'll let you know. There's $200,000. We've been annually and consistently asking for this in the budget, and it's been getting approved. And this is what John Bartlett's team works on. So pushing through, that's that $200,000 annually, and we're getting around 10 plus audible pedestrian push button conversions. So if you think about stuff that's already up there, this is helping us convert what's out there. 1.125 million, this is coming from the highway safety improvement program, and that's going to be a lot of those like rectangular rapid flashing beacons. Some of the other investments are going to be through, we've got $299,000, and we use this as match for congestion mitigation and air quality, or CMAQ funding, and that's a program that typically, I know it says air quality. If you think about it, where your air quality challenges in urban areas are going to be is where cars are stopped and the emissions are kind of all in a hot spot, right? Those are at intersections. So things like roundabouts, which can keep moving people instead of having folks stall, it helps move that, and you can move the needle on your air quality emissions. So that's why you see things like CMAQ funds going to things like better signal timing and converting things to roundabouts when it's appropriate. And then, Cindy, do you have anything to add to the CMAQ program and what I kind of described? Anything to adjust? Okay. And then the $150,000, that's another annual program that we also received approval for funding again for that neighborhood traffic calming program. The cool thing about this program is that the staff that runs that program is really looking towards moving towards a more proactive program citywide, and John Bartlett will talk more and more about that at another time. So the next objective, and this one's kind of broad, right? A 21st century multimodal experience. So, and there's documents that define what that is. And so some of the things, or the things that you see we're investing in here, are from things like your economic development and mobility strategy that was written back in 2020. So things like improved transit stops. We have annually put $200,000 away each year, and when we get enough, whether it's 200,000, 400,000, we send out, to be more efficient, we send out a packet of projects for bid. So we design them all at once. So instead of designing one transit stop at a time, we design maybe 20 at a time, and then we send out that bid package and get them constructed at the same time. This construction year is the first time I believe we've been able to do it in this model. And so we're going to see how many we can get constructed in a year. We're estimating 20 this year. So let's hang on there and see how we do. I'll be able to let you know after the construction season. And then pedestrian and bicycle connectivity. One of the things that we can do for a little bit smaller dollar amount is if we can't put that bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure in, whether that's push buttons or other things, and Cindy can tell you more about what they do to prep for that, we can add a little money to a project to prepare and lay the underground like wiring for that stuff. So that's what that, I know it looks small, but it goes a really long way when you divide it up to a couple of projects.
Jessica,
Yeah.
question about that.
Yeah.
Does that include like the green paint and stuff like that for like the NAPA money?
Nope. So this particular little $100,000, and Cindy, you can jump right in if you want to be technical about it. It has to do with the signal wiring underneath, right? What you need. You want to talk a little bit about it?
Anything that would have to cut the street or the sidewalk open later, we put it in when we do the street project. So maybe some hand pulls for pulling cable, even some foundation basins or thicker sidewalk slabs if we're going to attach something there. So we try to make sure all of our hardscape is ready to receive whatever sign or structure goes on top.
And the conduit's connecting those handholds.
Right, and the conduit connects the handholds.
Yeah. We're trying not to dig up a street more than we have to.
Right.
So if we don't have full money to put in all of the infrastructure that we want in that cross section, we can at least get started by doing some things and saving a little money by doing it the first time that Cindy's digging on the street.
Right, and sometimes for us, we'll also support by putting in like bulb outs to shorten the crossing distance, right? All the curb cuts, so it's ready to go for pedestrian traffic.
Yeah, and then some of the micromobility solutions, and this is less, there is a little funding attached to these things, but I wanted to point out annual safety campaigns for micromobility best practices. That is something we're currently working on now, and then expanding those designated parking zones, where you put the shared bike and scooter. So expanding that network so folks have places to put their shared scooters and bikes. And then finally, when you think about low carbon, affordable, convenient mobility solutions, this is really where, I'm glad Max brought it up, moving away from those diesel vehicles is very important with the Dash, and there's a replacement schedule, and we look for more low carbon solutions. And then also there's $300,000 for continued investment in the car share program, and I will have you more details about what that looks like in fiscal year 26 at a later meeting. I'm just not ready to share those total details, but I'm excited to talk with you all about what that looks like for fiscal year 26. What we do know is we are moving forward with phase 2 of the car share program, and that's moving us from 7 to 12 EV vehicles. And we'll figure out what we're going to do. We're trying to weigh the options between putting them in new locations, like those next 5, putting them in new locations, or should we just double up at the locations we have? We're thinking through that. We'll come back and talk with you guys about that in the future. And then community engagement and planning for future car share locations. So really needing to go back and talk to the community a little bit more to make sure that as we expand that program, if we were to go beyond those 12 that we have in our current program, what does that look like? So then also, the third objective, and as you can see, the 1, 2, 3 objectives, they kind of all work together. And this has more to do with our strategies around those partnerships with other departments, partnerships with business districts and our corridor improvement districts, and then also finding creative and proactive funding solutions. So when I was talking about the CMAQ funding, there's a local match for that, and making sure that we have a local match available in our budget so that when those grant opportunities come up, we can leverage that for even more money. And Cindy's group does that as well. Strategic systems planning, so any piece of your transportation system, you can have these overarching ones. You've heard a lot about the community master plan, which is for your whole community's plan to move forward in development. Every single transportation system needs its own detailed blueprint, if you will, about how to move forward. And Cindy's going to give you a really good example of the Vital Streets work, which is a type of blueprint for how and where infrastructure gets implemented. And then asset management. So working through any sort of asset that we are responsible for, like, for example, signing and striping on your streets, and having annual signing and striping funding going to taking care of keeping up those assets in good working order. And then finally, our parking infrastructure assets. We have a larger asset management plan for the structural components of our facilities and for the pavement of our surface lots. We have are now working on asset management plans for kind of the smaller things, the amenities is what I call them in our facilities, things like elevators, wayfinding, paint, those sorts of things. And we work with engineering to take care of those asset management plans. Finally, the other,
Sorry.
Oh yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, I will just go on and on.
Yeah, can I ask a question? So,
Sure.
I mean, as we talk about a transportation network, I think one thing I don't see on here, and I'm curious, perhaps why not, is why don't we consider the Rapid an external partner?
They
in our
are.
transportation network.
They sure are. That's just not one of the examples I gave, but
Okay.
it's absolutely one of our external partners. And thanks for bringing that up. They are a very important partner with us, and I appreciate you bringing that, just reminding everybody. Is that good? Okay, great. So one of the things, this was kind of the big ask at the commission this year. Multi-year transportation systems planning. I put in a request for $250,000 and for fiscal year 26. And so these are things that we need to work on a continuous basis. And this is a pot of funding that I wanted to set aside to make sure that we were prepared for the things that we need to update. We've got a lot of great plans. After a while, the data is no good, and we need to update at least that data portion. And so we've been talking with you all a lot about the parking investment strategy. That is updating data from a 2010 plan that DGRI put together in an appendix down in the GR4 plan. And so we needed that updated data to help make good decisions together, both the city and with their partners. And so that's an example of how I might, not me, but I mean how the department might use that bucket of funding. And these are the types of things that you might see from there. And one of the things that we do have funding for, and I'm really excited about, the Grand Valley Metro Council, we put in a proposal for funding to update our downtown circulation study. And so this would be like the pot of money that I would use to pay for the match on that funding that came from GVMC. I think there's a 20% match there. So these are some examples of what we might do with that funding. Oops, sorry. Okay. Yeah, go ahead. This is a great one.
So, yeah, I guess I have a process question then. So as we're looking towards implementing the community master plan that we adopted last year, what does that look like? Does that look like directives from city commission to put forth things that are in the plan, or do we kind of or does Mobile GR have more of a broad ability to say this is in the plan, this is what we're doing?
Yeah, so that is excellent question. So The implementation of the CMP is led by the planning department, and they have a big, long action list, and different departments throughout the city are leads for different implementation strategies, and we're on that list. They are in the middle of sorting out the next steps on that implementation, and they have a full project that they have also funded with this year's budget. They have funded a project to bring on some additional help from some consultants to work through those action lists, and we definitely have a part on that, and more to come. But I think that's a really good piece. And the other piece to point out is what our ownership in that area, even though we follow what planning says in the action plan. The mobility goals, there's a whole mobility section, and that's what helps guide some of the things that we're doing. Most of those, the mobility goals are things that are either policy tweaks that we can make together, and obviously anything that's code changing is going to have to come up to the city commission, but you all are my folks, my boots on the ground for when those things are happening, and it is my intention to bring you all that information and those recommendations to get your feedback to as we work through that process. And I have committed part of this line item right here to financially supporting moving forward with that implementation. So really good question, and I completely forgot to let you all know there. So it's a small step, but and a small financial investment, but I'm really excited to help out with that. Okay, anybody else? I know I'm just got a lot on you right now. Okay, so the last one is the fourth objective. The first three kind of work together, and then this one is that effective and customer responsive parking system. So here's some example investments that we're making in fiscal year 26. And by the way, these are things that I'll update you on in your packet in that monthly updates where it says here are infrastructure projects, and here's what we're spending money on, and here's the status. So this next year you can see things like $1.28 million for structural and roof repairs to parking ramps, mechanical repairs to parking booths. I mean, it's kind of like having to replace your plumbing in your house, right? We have to maintain our existing facilities, and it's expensive. We also have set aside $1 million to help with the structural repairs to the government center, and that's also engineering. That's an engineering project. They take it from here, and we're just in charge of paying for upkeeping our facilities. So, and then the parking investment strategy is one that we've been working through together with you all, and we'll keep you up to date on that. And then the parking market competitiveness framework. A couple of the things that we're doing is looking at our cost recovery, and that's just like a review that we need to do on a pretty regular basis to make sure that our model still looks right. And then reviewing fiscal year 25 rate adjustment impacts. So if you all remember this, I'm hoping some of you were here when this framework was put together. These are the goals for the framework, and then we are in year 2 as of fiscal year 26, so July 1st. So we want to evaluate those fiscal impacts of those rate increases that happened a year ago, see how that impacted the parking fund, see if we are still maintaining policy levels, those kind of good things. And that's the details that I really want to talk with you all about in September, or when I can get into my fiscal information. And the only thing that changed this year is we did have and this is part of that framework, was adjusting monthly parking pass rates by 2%, just to keep up with, do a little inflation upkeep. So, and that's where we're at with that. I want to hand this over to Cindy, but do you all have any other questions on what I put in front of you? Thanks, Alan.
Thank you for your hard work.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, you're welcome.
It's a lot.
I really appreciate y'all. You put me in the right direction. So here's where we're going.
I'm just waiting. You have a little bit. I'm gonna
Yeah, you have all the.
Here we go. All right, so before I start, right, we're going to kind of step through Vital Streets, the budget, the investment strategies that we have pretty quickly. Are there specific things on how Vital Streets works with Mobile GR or the items you discussed at the commission that are of particular interest to this group? All right, I'll hit the highlights and we'll leave lots of time for questions, right?
So
Yeah.
my sort of ongoing question is how the bicycle action plan and how we implement that plays into what Vital Streets does and how these two, I guess, plans work together to implement the bicycle plan at the same time as like the Vital Streets.
Yep, okay, all right. Okay, so let's talk Vital Streets briefly. So in August of 2013, the Sustainable Streets Task Force, after about 18 months meeting, came out with recommendations for a goal and a need for investment. At that time, we were coming out of a recession. The state had cut a lot of funding to the city, and our roads were in poor condition. They were about 38% good and fair, so 62% poor. With that investment strategy, we came up with the investment guidelines, which were approved by commission. Probably the most notable was balance and distribution between the three wards. That there was an expectation that Vital Streets dollars would be paid equally invested equally between the three wards. Initially, the plan called for a 30-year strategy of investment, and the voters told us, ask for 15, do a good job, come back and ask for another 15. So we are going to complete our first 15 years in 2030, which is the end of our current budget cycle. So we are at the renewal re-engagement phase. We also appointed a Vital Streets Oversight Commission. The Vital Streets Oversight Commission reviews the investment and the investment strategy. They do not design streets. That is part of design team and city staff. So that is a different group that does the street design. There were also some other commitments we made. The city committed to add 13 million in general operating funds to support Vital Streets, and that was a request of the Chamber of Commerce.
I was just telling you that was my favorite component. We had some fun meetings with their heart all the time.
Right.
Sorry, I'm just going back in time. This feels like a lifetime ago.
But I think it's good to share because Josh and I did a lot of work to get this passed. There was a lot of door knocking and phone calling, and it was a group effort.
My not yet wife at the time slipped on the steps of someone's house as we were door knocking, and has never done a door since.
Oh no.
It comes up every time we see someone door knocking. Remember that time that? Yeah.
Right. You're like, but look what you helped make happen. Look how beautiful. Look, we're moving in a great direction. With that, we also decided that the city would assume ownership of sidewalk improvements. And part of that is our previous policy, and it's written into the policy that if Vital Streets does not get passed, again, the policy will retroactively reinstate. But the owner of the house was responsible for repairing their sidewalk. If someone called and complained about a tripping hazard, we could go out and give them notice that they had to repair their sidewalk. Most people did not want to call and complain about their neighbors. So then what would happen is at point of sale, we would inspect and the sidewalk would have to be repaired at point of sale. And that was probably the majority of the sidewalk repairs. Once Vital Streets passed, the first 2 years of Vital Streets was everyone complaining about their own personal sidewalk and wanting us to come and repair it. Right? So people understood what they were voting for. They were very excited about that. The good thing about us taking over the sidewalk and the ownership of the sidewalk is it's difficult for a person to get a contractor to come and pour 1 or 2 squares of concrete. So we can let a large contract and do several blocks in a neighborhood, and it's much more efficient and also more efficient for our team that are going out to inspect, because now we're doing a mass amount of work. We also focus on systematic asset management, planning, and we focus primarily on preventative maintenance, which means we're going to try to get the assets to last as long as they can before we have to reconstruct them. Our investment, including the remainder of 2024, would have improved 647 miles. So you can say the remainder of 2024. When we presented in August, all of our data and statistics were still coming in for our metrics. So at that time, we had been 56% good and fair in 2023, and at the end of 2024, we were at 62% good and fair, which was good to get us back on a positive trajectory. So that's kind of like the big picture of the investments and how those were laid out. And then with the investment factors, the other thing we focused on were neighborhoods of focus, were a critical part. And we set aside a small amount of money, about $250,000 a year, to use for grant matching to close sidewalk gaps. So Vital Streets is about asset management and managing the assets that we currently have. So the money for sidewalks was to fix the existing sidewalks. But we knew as we were doing that, we would find areas where there were gaps, and we'd like to be able to close those gaps and have a continuous sidewalk. So we did approve a small amount of money to get, to have matching dollars for grant dollars to close sidewalk gaps. Closing sidewalk gaps, I think, is everyone's favorite thing. They get very excited. We get a lot of requests. The great news is we've been able to secure a TAP grant every year, and we've been able to do a sidewalk project every year. The original goal based on the money was to do about 5 miles, and we're at over 9 miles. So it is going really well, but there are still over 90 miles of streets that don't have sidewalks. And a lot of those are in our outlying areas and our townships, where we would have what the city concerns a partially improved street, so it's paved, but it also often has a soft shoulder, maybe a ditch system. And this is a perfectly good street. I lived on a street like this in a subdivision, right? And you walk, you ride your bike, everything in the street. The challenge in Grand Rapids is as we build density, the use of those streets by vehicles is changing, and people feel less safe using the street for multiple purposes and really are seeking sidewalks if we can add those. So we try to continually rank and prioritize our sidewalks.
Cindy, can I ask you a question?
Please.
So the sidewalk result is to eliminate that point of sale you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you measure that it's is it gone now? Does this not happen anymore?
Correct, it does not happen.
That's amazing.
Yep, so.
Now I'm gonna buy a house, so I don't have to worry about.
I'm just moving more towards home ownership.
But I need to renew in 2030, so I'm just saying, tick tock, Josh.
I'm with you. That's great.
Or we might have to go knock on some doors again, a little more door knocking.
But
So,
Cindy
yeah.
referenced how we're doing it in larger chunks, so we're systematically trying to get through the entire city in that 15-year period. Now we're tracking our progress, and that information's on the Vital Streets webpage, but we're trending a little bit behind, where we are in terms of that 15-year cycle, just because of the volume of work that's needed. But the goal is to try to get through everything one time in 15 years.
Right.
Did we have any type of measure? I mean, I know you can measure how many sidewalks you've improved, and it is, anecdotally, it seems so much better. Like you all just came through and did my entire neighborhood plus in probably a week, and everything looks great. But did we have any assessment, like we have PACER rating for streets? Is there any measurable assessment that citizens can be aware of that says, like, not only do you not have to fix your own sidewalk and pay for it and deal with all that hassle, but when you're out walking in our walkable neighborhoods, it's this much better? Is there any type of...
So the metric that we're tracking is miles of sidewalk inspected and repaired.
Oh,
so that
okay.
means somebody has gone through, so that number isn't, the exact distance or length of repairs, because there's, maybe a section here, section there, or maybe multiple sections, but that meter is on our Vital Streets webpage.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any assessments before, pre-2013?
Oh,
Because it
as far
wasn't-
as the condition.
Like, I'm wondering,
how much-
can we compare it and say,
Yeah.
again, there's a measurable improvement to all of our cities' walkability.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't think we had that measurement of how deficient was the
Yeah.
entire sidewalk network. There's roughly, I think, 900 miles of
Yeah.
sidewalks throughout the city, and so just the task of going through and trying to identify what's the current condition at the start would have been a tremendous lift. But again, the method is just let's go through section by section and
I think
evaluate it all.
generally neighborhoods have seen the improvements.
Yeah.
So you're already trying to get talking points for knocking doors.
Well,
I think you got a couple.
several of us are convinced that this is about 80% of the people that voted yes wanted this.
Oh, yes.
Versus the streets, because it is a big ask. It was a tax increase, and
And I think the big point we had is everyone is a pedestrian on the last bit of their journey, right? At some point, whatever got you to your point, you are a pedestrian to complete your journey and enter whatever building, facility, property that you're entering. So it really does benefit everyone. I think if anything, Josh, we don't have this metric, but we do track our investment in sidewalks, and we do have a pretty good idea of our cost per square. So there are ways for us to kind of back into different ways at looking at the data. And I think that's a good thing to keep in mind as we go into the renewal, how to tell the story and explain to people the work we've done. The other thing that the sidewalk division does when it's repairing the existing sidewalk, it addresses curb cuts and ADA plates. And so a couple of things we'd like to clarify on that. We prioritize curb cuts where there's no curb cut right now and you have that 6-inch curb face, and it's truly a barrier to anyone with a wheeled device. So we try to make sure those are cut. So when we go in and repair a sidewalk, if there is a curb cut, if the slope is appropriate, it might have an ADA plate that is antiquated, right? Not the current standard, but it is accessible, right? So we also track how many inaccessible curbs we're fixing, right? So we don't necessarily give ourselves credit if we just change the warning plate. But we do track if we came to a corner, there was a curb face or there was an inappropriate slope, and we went in and redid that sidewalk, redid the grade, put in the tactile plate so that people could use that. So that's another metric that we track that's important to us. I'm going to move through this next section fairly quickly, but this is what I want you to see big picture, is our primary funding source is the income tax. You can see that is almost $18 million a year, a very substantial investment from our citizens. Our Act 51 revenues come from our gas and weight tax, and $3.4 million of that was promised to Vital Streets off the top of our Act 51 dollars. And then if you skip down to state investment, which is third from the bottom with the numbers, about $8 million a year, as we have more than $6 million a year in Act 51 dollars come in, we get the first 3.4, Public Works gets the next 2.6. After $6 million, there's a new formula where we split that additional money. So a large portion of it goes to O&M, right? And our Public Works Department plows your streets, fixes potholes, sweeps the streets, does a lot of work to keep our streets in good working order. And then another portion goes into Vital Streets where we're doing capital investment. And then we also have the general operating fund that we talked about briefly. We managed to secure about $4 to $5 million in grants every year. This is a budget, so we always try to be conservative. We have a bond principal repayment. When Vital Streets was first passed in May of 2014, we're not going to collect that income tax until the following year. So leadership, I think, wisely went out to the bond market and got dollars to immediately start the Vital Streets program and fixing our streets. And then as that income tax came in, it was able to pay down that bond. And that will be done this year in 2026. So the big picture here is that income tax support is really the largest support of Vital Streets, and it really has been an active effort by the citizens of Grand Rapids and the people who work here, contributing to city taxes and contributing to us improving the city for everybody. When we use the money, there's a few different things. We have our transfer to sidewalks. We talked briefly about sidewalks and how we're managing that. $675,000 a year goes to traffic safety and signals. That goes to Mobile GR. We have some investment in bridges. Our bridges are all in good and fair condition, so mostly we can do preventative maintenance. And then we have 3 classes: FAU, major non-FAU, and local. Those are our 3 street classifications. A federal aid urban street, I can get grants from MDOT to help pay for that street. A major non-FAU street, it was not listed as one of the original Act 51 federal aid urban streets. It's big, it's important, it takes a little bit more maintenance, but I cannot get federal grants for it. I only have about 50 miles of major non-FAU streets. But they're important, we treat them a little differently. They're usually higher traffic loads, heavier vehicles. And then we have local streets, and our local streets are almost 400 of our 600 miles. So most of our streets are local streets. And those are our three categories. And if you look at our investment, you can see in our FAU streets, I'm investing like 12 to 17 million a year. In my local streets, I'm averaging from 10 to 16 million, right? Depending on how I'm investing. We're gonna go down and you're gonna look at the list of streets and you're gonna see we're doing substantially more local streets because we're able to do more preventative maintenance.
FAU is what?
Federal aid urban. The other thing we have in here, right, we have our sidewalk connectivity and our local share. We have our grants. We also line storm sewers to extend that asset. We also invest in right-of-way and green infrastructure to help maintain and treat stormwater in place. And then we also have money in contingency that we keep because projects, once we start to design, can vary. So we break this apart. These are past investments. And then 2026, which is the budget we're approving. And then we project out what we anticipate doing in the next few years. So I'm just going to skip through those quickly. So let's talk roads. So our FAU street work, we're estimating that we're going to spend about 17 million in 2026 fiscal year. And we're going to do about 7.6 centerline miles of streets. So in our 1.5-inch mill and resurface, you can see our list of streets here. So I had 14 rotomills and resurfaces, right? 15, 16 that I'm doing. And then I have a 3-inch, one 3-inch rotomill and resurface. And then I have 8 reconstructions. So you can see that my reconstructions are almost 8 million of my 17 million. So a reconstruction is a much more expensive investment to fully reconstruct a street. Major non-FAU is our classification that has reached 70% good and fair, so we have less investment in this area. We're also doing some bridge preventative maintenance. But then when you start to look at our local streets, I'm just going to click through. You can see our mill and resurface, we're going to spend about 9 million, and we're going to do 22 centerline miles of streets. So we're doing about 6 centerline miles of major. For 17 million, we're doing 22 for 9 million. So the story here is your local streets are smaller, lower vehicle traffics, easier traffic control, usually less width because we're measuring centerline miles, not lane miles. So we're able to get a lot of work done on these streets, a lot of miles completed. So if we look at the list, right, we share this list of streets that we've budgeted. We also have some 3-inch mill and resurfaces that are listed, and we also have reconstructions. Many of our reconstructions we're able to do because we're partnering with our public utilities. They are replacing water mains, they're replacing sewers, and that helps buy down the cost because they share in the reconstruction of the street.
I'm sorry, can you
Yeah.
clarify the 1.5 and 3-inch? Just
Yep, absolutely. Let me do that with pictures. Can we bring up the next group of slides with the pictures? So in general, we do 3 different treatments on streets. We do reconstructions, which is what we're going to start with. Reconstruction, I think, makes sense to everyone. Often we're doing a utility where we're digging deep, but if we're only reconstructing the street portion, then it's usually a sand subbase, a gravel base, and then our asphalt. But at the same time, when we do a reconstruction, we will relook at the curb line, the lane widths, the use of the space, the sidewalks. We'll look at the entire right-of-way in a reconstruction because we've hired an engineer, we're doing a survey, we're fully designing it, so it really opens up our opportunities. So that's reconstruction. We do rehabilitation, which is a 3-inch mill and resurface. So it's a more substantial, it'll cut down both to the leveling course and the top course. And so we considered it a rehabilitation because if those lower layers, if that gravel and sand are in good shape, it will fully restore the street. And then we do preventative maintenance, and 1.5 mill and resurface is considered preventative maintenance. We take off the top course and we repave that top course. But let me show you some examples because I think this helps highlight what we do. So here we had a reconstruction of Carlton from Lake Drive to Hope Street. Before we reconstructed it, it was a Pacer 2. And the Pacer rating is how we assess our streets. Pacer 1, 2, 3, and 4 are poor condition. After the reconstruction, it was a Pacer 10. And there's some things that you'll notice if we look. So the other thing is with Carlton, with the reconstruction, 7 years later, it is still a Pacer 8. So usually when we reconstruct, we fully renewed the asset and we get a fairly long life from it. Usually we can get a 20-year life from a road. There will be some preventative maintenance, crack sealing, right? If we do have a pothole develop, we would address that right away. So if we look by the side-by-side comparison, I think some of the things that are interesting, let's see if the laser works for me. If you look at this corner here, and you look at this corner here, right, you can see that we put in a new sidewalk here with a curb cut, ADA compliant to cross the road to line up with the other intersection, right? We have ADA plates here. We dealt with, there you can see there was a curb head so people weren't able to cross the road. You can see your curb here. A lot of it over the years we'd put down more asphalt, that was covered up. That can cause problems with stormwater leaving the street. It can also result in catch basins being low, right, and being nice bumping trip hazards for your car. So we will replace curb and gutter as needed. We will bring our sidewalks up to Vital Street standards and ADA compliance. We repave, and you can see here, this street has painted a Cheryl. That was the treatment for the bikes. Here's a reconstruction of a brick street. So we have a policy in the city to maintain our street types. So we restore the brick street. This is before, this is a Pacer 2. This is Weston afterwards. And just the side by side, you can just see the dramatic change with the investment and the improvement to the street. You can see we added several trees in tree wells to try to add some more green space and changed out the sidewalk. And in this case, we had partners who wanted more placemaking, so you can see there's brick banding along the street.
Brick streets last longer,
Not necessarily. Brick streets are challenging and expensive because first you build a concrete street and then you put a brick street on top of it. But it is kind of the character and the sense of the city, and so we typically maintain our street type. And in our historic districts, we have to maintain our street types. They're well-built streets. They do last a long time, but every street has wear and tear. So we always assume within 20 years we're back in doing something to restore it.
Hey Cindy, in that particular case right there,
Yeah.
I was seeing on the left there, there's like brick and there's some pavement. And so was it again back to like the placemaking piece to choose to go to all brick, or was there brick underneath that pavement?
No, on the concrete, there was brick under the pavement, correct. So this street had degraded to the point that there were large enough potholes within the street that Public Works came in and overlaid it with asphalt until we rebuilt it.
Wow.
This is a 3-inch rotomill and overlay at LaGrave. So a 3-inch rotomill is considered rehabilitation. So it's a little bit more intense, but we typically aren't touching the gravel base and subbase. So here's our before, it was a Pacer 3. Here's our after, it's a Pacer 9. The reason it's a 9, Pacer rating, the only way you can be a 10 is if you reconstruct. And then you only get to be a 10 for 1 year. I don't know, it hurts me a little bit, but that's the way it goes. So I'm just living with it. It's fine. So this is a 3-inch mill and resurface. And again, you can see we were able to do a lot to improve the pedestrian crossings, the ADA compliance and curb cuts. And then 6 years later, it's still a Pacer 6. Now, LaGrave is a very busy street. It has high levels of traffic. What you can see here is there's a significant amount of crack sealing So here where you go and put in that nice black shiny tar and you fill in the cracks, crack sealing is an important part of preventative maintenance that our public works team does, and that will extend the life of the street quite substantially. And a Pacer 6 is still considered a street in fair condition.
And the markings piece of it is the piece that traffic and safety and mobile GR takes care of. And this was part of that asset management I was talking about. And now we've been working really hard, and maybe you even know a little bit more about this, Cindy, is we've been working really hard to make sure that we are on a annual redo all over the city, right? So that we can make sure everything doesn't look like this. You know, this is very end of life, needs to be redone. And so we look for paint applications where we can make it last for 3 years. I believe that's kind of normal. And so this is just an example of a place where this would be in our asset management plan to somehow, you know, at some point be in the schedule to get it taken care of.
Right.
Did I explain that correctly?
Yeah,
You feel like,
yep,
okay.
absolutely. I think the other good thing that Mobile GR has done is they have worked with different products to try to find a more durable product that'll last longer. So, and then you can see the side-by-side comparison of the beginning from a 3 to a 9 and the investment. Here's another 3-inch mill and overlay on Michigan Street. So on Michigan Street, we had 4 lanes of traffic, and this is from Leffingwell to Greenwich Ridge Road. It was a Pacer 3. And then on restoring it, we basically would work with Mobile GR and the traffic safety engineers. They would do a traffic study and determine the traffic volume. And what they determined was this could be a 3-lane road with a left-hand turn. We prefer that to 4 lanes if we're able to, because what we find is people are used to using the left-hand lane to pass, and now you have someone stopped who is turning, and you would have several rear-end accidents. It was actually a more dangerous situation for everyone. So being able to go to 3-lane when it's appropriate for the volume of traffic also increases safety on the street, and traffic safety is one of our key design considerations. We were also able to provide large shoulders that were used for bike facilities. And you can kind of see that side by side, how that road was reimagined. Now let's talk 1.5 inch. So now an 1.5 inch mill and resurface is considered preventative maintenance. We're just taking off the top course and repaving. So this was East Paris from 28th Street to Sparks. It was a Pacer 3. And then when it was completed, the following year it had dropped to a Pacer 8. And then 6 years later, it was a Pacer 4. And East Paris just got touched again last year, where we went in and worked with Kentwood to redo East Paris. Yeah.
Oh, we were just running out of time, but we really appreciate you being here.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where I think the whole point being 6 years later, I've dropped to a 4. And a lot of that is I have heavy vehicle, heavy truck traffic, right? Where if I do a local road, if I'm doing a local road, like here, well, here's Wealthy from Straight to 400 feet west of Front. We go from a Pacer 3 to a Pacer 9, and then you can just see the improvement. And then the last thing we do is overlay. Overlay is also preventative maintenance. That's the Public Works Department. This is Bridge Street. It was a Pacer 2. They came in and overlaid, and you can see that there is still some reflective cracking, but it stabilizes the road because a Pacer 2 is on the verge of failure, right? And so it stabilizes the asset. It brings it back up to fair condition. 7 years later, it had dropped again to a Pacer 3, but it hadn't returned to a 2. So simply by going in and overlaying, which is a very cost-effective treatment that our internal resources can manage, we were able to extend the life of that asset for 7 years. So a lot of the questions we get are, like this was another overlay on Melbourne. So how are you picking what to do on a street? When are you doing streets? We're trying to do balance between wards, 1, right? And also within the precincts. So the precincts, when this was approved, we're also doing balance and distribution between precincts. And then we're also looking for basically to get the most life out of the asset with the lowest dollar investment. So we're looking at different treatment methods to try to extend the life of the asset. Bikes. How do we do bikes and how do we integrate the bike action plan? That is, I think that's evolving pretty dramatically right now. So when things were first passed during Sustainable Streets, the goal was to get some distinct north, south, east, west bike facilities. Like, could we do that? And then as we progressed, we were just constantly looking for opportunities, because we're like, you know what, we just need to start adding this. We need to start doing road diets. We need to start rethinking the space. So it's kind of that challenge where we're over 100 miles of bike lanes now, but some of them just stop and they're not all connected, right? And so now we're getting to the point where the Mobile GR has gone out and sought grants to try to do more enhanced facilities. We're looking at other options. And then they're also kind of looking at a strategic master plan and what the overall investment level would be. Because the Vital Streets investment promises that we made to meet 70% good and fair did not include enhanced bike facilities. So we certainly seek grants, look for opportunities, and try to partner to do more. But we're really gearing up again for the renewal of the millage, what that would look like, what the strategic investment would look like for all users.
So as we look to the renewal in 4 or 5 years, that could include saying like this millage could fund things like bicycle and pedestrian. Well, I guess the sidewalks is already in there, but it could fund bicycle improvements.
I think that is a conversation that will be had, is how are we going to fund? Because when we did Vital Streets the first time, there were things like, will this fund the traffic signals? And the decision was made that the millage would not support that. Like the investment strategy, there would not be enough. So I don't want to say what it's going to fund, but what I can tell you is all the departments who have assets within the right-of-way are getting prepared for the millage renewal and what their investment plan would look like, so that we can bring good recommendations to that committee and hopefully come out with a clear plan moving forward. I will say, we get a lot of calls from people where, you know, my street's in bad shape. When are you going to do my street? I want a sidewalk. Can you close the sidewalk? And I tell people, I love that, because it tells me yes, and yes, we love what you're doing. Things look great, and I want that in my neighborhood too. So I really hope with the renewal and the next cycle, we're able to impact and improve more areas of the city.
Thanks, Cindy.
Yeah.
I appreciate all y'all's questions. My commitment is to get you all out of here in 90 minutes. So if it's all right, if there are more questions, please get those to me and Mary, and we will circle back up with Cindy. I don't think this is the last time we're going to see Cindy and Tim. There's a lot going on, and you all have made some really good points about Vital Streets is coming up, and there are bigger conversations on the way, and you all will definitely be part of that. So thank you, Cindy. Thank you so much. Are you ready?
We're ready.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'm going to run through your updates really quickly. I have moved to a new format for your updates. I want to make sure that the larger things that are on our plates that you all have an update on. And so you had the Modi update, the Modi project, and you had the parking investment project, and there were some the project managers on the staff came and gave you a little verbal update. I put in your packet a memo, and this is going to help me track when and what information that I've given you all, so that when you have the big huge project presentation, you'll remember, okay, we had that project presentation last time. We talked a lot about parking last time, and here's the memo that accompanies that. So this is the Modi project, to give you in a nice, succinct place what we're doing, and we will give you regular updates. The next memo you have in there is for the parking investment strategy project update. Again, that's just following up with what we chatted about last month. And then, do I have one more? Oh, pause right there. Okay. And the other update that's just a line item in your agenda is the Parking Incentive Program Working Group update. I have a working group put together. It's a lot of great folks. They're all very busy, because if you want something done, you ask a group of busy people. I have a facilitator selected. I am working on getting those times together that everyone can get together, because I believe everybody that you all put on your list for that working group is really valuable to that group. So the facilitator is asked, why don't we push out and look for some dates a little bit in the future, with a goal of getting this wrapped up in a recommendation to come back, and the working group to bring recommendations back to this body by middle of winter, or kind of beginning winter, so November, December timeframe. About the same time, you'll see the parking investment strategy wrap up. So I want to ask that you just be patient with me. We are still trying to get that group together and get some solid dates. We're looking to put a number of working group sessions on calendars in little 2-hour buckets. So I'll be sending out a communication after today to that group to say, hey, I know it's been quiet and this is not on your calendar yet, but we are working on that. Your monthly updates are in your packet. A lot of the things that we talked about today, I want to make sure you all know what projects we're working on, what strategy or where the status is on those projects, and then also your regular numbers that we look at. The one thing I do want you to mention, if you could just go right back up, right there. There was a question here. If you'll see our dash work, you see that little negative 29.8. So there was a little dip in the dash work ridership. That has to do with construction, right, Max?
Yes.
Yes. So Max, just real quick, it's the construction of the...
Yeah, the closure of Area 7 and the displacement of those monthly parkers there account for just the reduction in that particular service as folks are maybe finding other locations to park or potentially taking other modes to get to their destination.
Yeah, thanks, Max. So what Max is talking about is when we shut that most of that parking area down, DGRI's parking area that we maintain or we manage, we only had we had under 30 monthly parkers there. That's what's amazing. We had under 30 parkers, but that is the kind of impact you can see, 30 parkers per day over a month. You can see that kind of adjustment. So don't let those numbers worry you too much. That is a shift in our system.
So for the commission, Area 7's a soccer stadium. So.
Yes, sorry.
Yes.
So that is it is a wonderful thing that we're developing a surface lot and doing some infill there. It is just an adjustment. It didn't mean those folks disappeared. Like Max said, they're likely finding other ways or other solutions, and it may be that they are part of our pop-up in your dash circulator numbers, which you see are 23%. So we continue to see success in additional riderships with the year-to-year, month-to-month, and we'll keep talking about that. Okay, that is all I have for you all. Thank you so much for today, and that's it.
Yes, next is public comment. If there is anyone in the audience that would like to come forward, that was your opportunity. Seeing none. Any other commission comments? All right, we are adjourned. It is 1:30 exactly. Congratulations.
Told you I could do it.